Everyone walked past the frail old lady lying in the rain, except Amara. She never imagined that one act of kindness would rewrite her destiny and melt a millionaire's frozen heart. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you are hooked in and you are ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you are watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. Atlanta at 7:32 a.m. was a blur of noise and gray skies. Rain drizzled over cracked sidewalks, bus fumes filled the air, and people moved like ghosts, eyes glued to phones, hearts sealed shut. Amara James tugged her thin jacket tighter and clutched her coffee cup, the warmth long gone. Her shift at the elder care home had run late again. She hadn't eaten since yesterday's lunch, but she smiled anyway, the kind of smile that fought against exhaustion and dared the world to break her spirit. Her sneakers squelched through puddles as she crossed Peachtree Avenue, whispering to herself, "One day at a time, girl. Just one more day." Her bus was 10 minutes late, again. Around her, people sighed, cursed, and scrolled. Amara's gaze drifted across the crowded street when she saw her, an elderly woman, silver-haired, frail, clutching a cane as cars swerved past her. The old lady tried to step off the curb, but her legs buckled. She stumbled, nearly falling. No one stopped. Not the man in the tailored suit. Not the woman holding a child. Not the crowd that streamed around her like rainwater around a rock. Something in Amara snapped. She dropped her coffee and ran. "Ma'am? Hey, ma'am." Amara's voice trembled as she knelt beside the old woman. Rain soaked her braids, plastering them to her cheeks. "It's okay, I got you." The woman blinked up, dazed, lips trembling. They just walked past me." Amara nodded, slipping her arm around her shoulders. "They don't see what matters anymore. But I do. You're not alone, okay?" She guided her gently to the curb, her own clothes dripping. The woman's hand was ice cold, her pulse faint. Without hesitation, Amara shouted for help, waved down a cab, and half-carried her inside. When the driver grumbled about wet seats, Amara pressed her last crumpled bill into his hand. "Just drive, please. Nearest hospital." As the cab sped through traffic, Amara held the woman's hand tight. The city blurred into streaks of gray and red. Somewhere between the honks and sirens, the woman whispered, "You remind me of my son. He used to care." Amara smiled softly. "Then he raised you right." At Grady Memorial, the air smelled like bleach and fear. Nurses hurried past, machines beeped, and Amara stood alone in the waiting room, soaked to the bone. She should have left hours ago, her next shift started soon, but she couldn't bring herself to walk away. The old lady, whose name she'd learned was Margaret Cole, was in treatment. When a nurse approached, Amara straightened. "Is she okay?" "She'll need rest. Mild hypothermia, blood pressure drop." "Are you family?" Amara hesitated. "No. Just someone who didn't want her to be alone." The nurse smiled faintly, the first kind face Amara had seen all day. "Then you're rare." Amara sat in the corner, exhausted, shivering. She looked out the window at the relentless rain and whispered, "People don't stop for people anymore." Have you ever seen someone in need, and everyone just walked by? Be honest, what would you have done? Tell me in the comments. Hours later, the sound of polished shoes echoed down the hall. A tall man in a charcoal suit appeared, sharp jaw, storm-gray eyes, and the cold composure of someone used to control. Ethan Cole. He moved with the quiet power of wealth, but something about him seemed hollow. When he reached the nurse's station, the nurse pointed toward Amara. "That young lady brought your mother in," she said. Ethan turned. His gaze fell on Amara, her soaked clothes, tired eyes, and unshakable calm. For a split second, something in his chest flickered. He walked over, voice measured. "You were with my mother?" Amara stood, unsure if she'd done something wrong. "Yes. She fainted in the street. I couldn't just leave her there." He nodded curtly. Thank you. I'll make sure you're compensated. Her eyes hardened. That's not why I helped her, sir. The words hit him harder than expected. He wasn't used to being corrected, especially by someone who had nothing to gain. He studied her a moment longer. She turned away, dismissing him with quiet dignity. For the first time in years, Ethan felt something close to shame. When Margaret woke, she found Amara still sitting beside her bed, holding her hand. You stayed, she whispered weakly. Amara smiled. Where else would I be? Margaret's frail fingers brushed her cheek. You're a good girl. My son needs to meet someone like you. Amara chuckled. If he's anything like you, I think we already met. Margaret's smile widened, then faded into sleep. When Ethan returned to the room, he paused at the doorway. He saw Amara adjusting his mother's blanket, her expression soft and full of care. Something about that image, so natural, so human, stirred a memory of his late father. He took a breath and spoke quietly, Thank you for staying. Amara looked up, surprised by the gentleness in his tone. You're welcome. She's strong. She'll be okay. As he nodded, their eyes met. The world outside seemed to hush, rain tapping faintly against the window. Neither knew that moment would change everything. When Amara finally left the hospital, dawn had begun to break. The city was washed clean by rain, and she felt something shift inside her, a strange warmth, as though she'd stepped into someone's story by accident. She didn't know that in the room she'd just left, Ethan Cole stood at the window, staring after her. His mother's voice, still weak, broke the silence. Ethan, she has the heart you lost. He said nothing, but for the first time in years, he didn't rush back to his meetings or emails. Instead, he watched the rain, wondering who the girl was that had made his mother smile again. 3 days had passed since the hospital. Amara tried to bury the memory beneath long shifts, restless nights, and endless to-do lists. But sometimes, while she washed dishes or folded laundry at the care home, she'd catch herself thinking about that man with gray eyes, the one who thanked her like it was an inconvenience. She'd laugh to herself. What am I doing thinking about some rich stranger? Then came the knock on the door. A man in a dark suit stood in the entryway of the care home's lobby, holding an envelope. Miss Amara James? She nodded cautiously. He handed her the letter. From Mr. Ethan Cole. Amara's eyebrows furrowed. The hospital man? The messenger only smiled. Yes, ma'am. He asked that you read it privately. When he left, she opened it slowly. The handwriting was crisp, impersonal, yet something in it trembled between the lines. Miss James, I want to personally thank you for helping my mother. She insists on meeting you again. I'll be visiting tomorrow, and she'd be grateful if you could be there as well. Ethan Cole. Amara's stomach flipped. She wasn't sure if she was nervous or curious. The next day, the hospital smelled faintly of lavender and antiseptic. Margaret looked stronger now, sitting up with a blanket on her lap. Her smile lit up the room when Amara walked in. Ah, my angel, she said warmly. You came back. Amara grinned. You didn't think I'd leave without saying hello? Margaret squeezed her hand. You remind me of my late husband's heart, stubborn and kind. Before Amara could respond, Ethan walked in, every inch the composed businessman. But his usual icy demeanor cracked slightly when he saw his mother's smile widen. Mr. Cole, Amara said politely, standing. Ethan, he corrected. Please, call me Ethan. Their eyes met, and this time, it lingered. He sat quietly for a moment, listening to his mother chatter about how Amara stayed all night and how she made her laugh. Something in him softened again, despite his efforts to stay guarded. Then Margaret turned to her son and said something that changed everything. Ethan, dear. I want Amara to stay. I trust her more than anyone else. Ethan blinked. Stay. As in? As my caregiver, Margaret said firmly. Until I'm fully recovered. Amara's eyes widened. "Oh, I can't. I mean, I have another job." But Margaret's pleading gaze silenced her. "Please, darling. You're the only one who makes this place feel less like a hospital." Ethan looked at Amara, measuring her hesitation. "You'll be compensated well, of course." She hesitated. "I'm not doing this for money." He smirked faintly. "I've noticed." Their exchange was quick but electric, a subtle current passing through the sterile air. As Margaret drifted into sleep, Amara stood by the window, watching the rain trace patterns down the glass. Ethan joined her, keeping a polite distance. "You really stayed with her the entire night?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "I couldn't leave her alone. I know what that feels like." His brow furrowed. "You've been through that?" Amara gave a small, sad smile. "When my mom died, I waited in the emergency room for hours. People passed by like I was invisible. It changes you." Ethan's throat tightened. He didn't know what to say. For a man used to closing deals and speaking in boardrooms, her honesty disarmed him completely. "You shouldn't have had to go through that," he murmured. She shrugged. "We all go through something. Some just hide it better." Silence filled the space between them, not awkward, but charged. He turned to her. "My mother doesn't open up easily. You've done more for her in 2 days than most doctors have in years." Amara looked surprised. She just needed someone to listen. He smiled faintly. "That's rarer than you think." As the visit ended, Ethan offered her a ride home. She refused twice before reluctantly agreeing, mostly to avoid the storm outside. The car was sleek and silent, the kind that smelled like leather and success. Amara sat stiffly in the back seat beside him. "You don't have to be nervous," Ethan said, glancing at her reflection in the tinted window. "I'm not nervous," she replied, clearly nervous. He chuckled. "You're a terrible liar." Amara frowned, crossing her arms. "I'm just not used to this kind of life. People like me take buses, not black cars." "Maybe people like you deserve better," he said before he could stop himself. Their eyes met again, and this time, she looked away first. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. When they reached her apartment building, a small, weathered complex with flickering hallway lights, he got out of the car and held an umbrella over her head. "You don't have to," she began. "I want to," he said simply. They stood in the rain for a moment, two worlds colliding under a single umbrella. Amara turned to him, voice softer now. "Why does your mother live alone?" He hesitated. "We had disagreements. After my father died, things got complicated. I thought sending money would fix things." "It doesn't," she said gently. "People don't want money. They want presence." He looked at her, truly looked at her. "You speak like you've lived twice your years." She laughed quietly. "Life doesn't wait till you're ready to learn." For a moment, Ethan's carefully constructed walls seemed to crumble. The storm around them blurred into silence. Then, as thunder rolled overhead, he whispered, "I'd like you to work with her. Not just for her sake. For mine." Her eyes widened, not from the offer, but from the vulnerability in his voice. "I'll think about it," she said softly. And with that, she disappeared into her building, leaving him in the rain, for once, not minding it. That night, Amara sat by her window, watching the rain. She touched her chest, wondering why her heart raced so fast for someone she barely knew. Meanwhile, in his penthouse across the city, Ethan replayed their conversation in his mind, her voice, her eyes, her defiance. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and muttered, "You're losing your mind, Cole. She's just a girl." But when his mother called and said softly, "She's special, Ethan. Don't let the world ruin that," he realized something had already begun, something he couldn't quite name. If you were in Amara's shoes, would you trust someone like Ethan, rich, cold, but unexpectedly kind? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know who you'd trust with your heart. 3 days later, Amara was folding laundry at the elder care center when she heard her name over the intercom. Amara James, there's someone here asking for you. Her brows furrowed. She hadn't been expecting anyone. Wiping her hands, she walked to the reception area, then stopped cold. Ethan Cole stood by the door, dressed not in a suit but a simple navy sweater and jeans. Still, his presence drew every pair of eyes in the room. He looked completely out of place among the chipped floors and disinfectant smell. Amara blinked. Mr. Cole. He turned, a faint smile tugging his lips. It's Ethan. I wanted to thank you properly this time. Amara hesitated, self-conscious of her plain uniform and tired face. You already did. Not really, he said softly. I didn't say thank you. I offered money instead. That wasn't gratitude, it was guilt. Her lips parted slightly. The honesty in his tone disarmed her. He extended a small box. Inside lay a delicate silver bracelet with a single engraved word, kindness. I had this made, he explained. My mother insisted. Amara's eyes softened. That's beautiful. But I can't accept it. Please, he said. It's not payment. It's a reminder that people like you still exist. After a moment's silence, she accepted it gently. Thank you, Ethan. He smiled faintly. That's the first time you've said my name. Ethan glanced around the center, elderly residents chatting, a nurse pushing a wheelchair, Amara gently fixing a blanket over one of the patients. It was humble, noisy, far from his sleek world of glass towers and luxury offices. Yet somehow, it felt more real. You work here full-time? He asked. 6 days a week. Sometimes 7 if someone calls in sick. She gave a small shrug. They're family to me. Ethan looked puzzled. Family. But none of them are related to you. Family isn't always blood, she said simply. Sometimes it's who still looks for you when everyone else has turned away. Her words lingered in his mind like an echo. He realized he didn't have anyone who looked for him anymore. He followed her as she checked on patients, quietly observing the way she laughed with them, remembered each person's name, and treated them like they mattered. There was no performance, just pure, gentle care. At one point, a frail old man coughed violently. Amara rushed over, rubbing his back, calling for water. Ethan instinctively stepped forward to help, steadying the cup for her. Their hands brushed. For a heartbeat, the world fell still. Amara looked up, meeting his gaze. Something unspoken passed between them, an understanding neither dared name. After her shift, Amara walked Ethan out to the parking lot. The evening sun dipped low, painting the sky gold and lavender. You didn't have to stay the whole day, she said. He smiled faintly. It was peaceful here. That's not what most people say about this place. He chuckled softly. Then most people probably haven't seen it through your eyes. She tilted her head, curious. What do you see? He hesitated, then said quietly, I see someone giving the world more love than it ever gave her back. Amara froze. Her throat tightened. You don't know me, Ethan. Maybe not, he admitted. But I can see pain when I recognize it. She exhaled, looking away. My mom raised me alone. She got sick. I couldn't afford her treatment. The system didn't care, people didn't care, but I promised I wouldn't turn into them. I'd help others, even if I was broke doing it. Ethan listened silently. Her words cracked something in him. He thought of his own mother, lonely in her mansion, and of the years he'd buried himself in work to avoid the guilt. You're stronger than anyone I know, he murmured. Amara smiled faintly. I just do what's right. That doesn't make me strong. Yes, it does, he said. It makes you extraordinary. For the first time, Amara saw past his expensive watch and measured tone, and glimpsed a man who was quietly falling apart inside. Back at the hospital, Margaret Cole sat by her window, smiling knowingly as her nurse helped her into a cardigan. When my son visits again, she said, make sure to tell him I'd like to see Miss James. The nurse blinked. Amara? The caregiver from the center. Yes, Margaret said, her eyes twinkling. There's something about that girl. She brings the sun into rooms my son turned gray. That evening, when Ethan arrived, Margaret feigned a weak smile. Ethan, darling. I'm feeling better, but only if you promise to invite that sweet girl for dinner. I owe her a proper thank you. Ethan sighed, but his mother's tone left no room for argument. All right, Mom. I'll ask her. Margaret nodded, hiding her grin. Good. And wear something casual. You look more like a lawyer than a human these days. He chuckled, despite himself. For the first time in months, his mother was laughing again, and that alone made him agree. Amara arrived nervously at the Cole residence, a sprawling modern estate perched on a hill, all glass, stone, and silence. She wore her best dress, simple and blue, with the silver bracelet glinting softly on her wrist. The butler led her in. Ethan waited near the grand staircase, his expression warm but hesitant. You made it, he said softly. I almost didn't, she admitted. I've never been anywhere like this. He smiled. Neither have most people I know. You'll be fine. Margaret entered, her energy radiant despite her frail frame. Amara, my dear. She hugged her like family. You saved my life, and brought joy back into this cold house. Amara blushed. I'm just glad you're feeling better, ma'am. They ate together, Ethan surprisingly relaxed, laughing at his mother's stories while Amara's laughter filled the spaces between their silences. For once, the mansion didn't feel like a museum. Halfway through dinner, Margaret excused herself, claiming she needed rest. Ethan looked up, realizing she'd done it on purpose. So, he said softly, now it's just us. After dinner, they stepped outside to the terrace. A storm was rolling in, the same kind of rain that had brought them together. Thunder rumbled far off. Amara wrapped her arms around herself. Seems like the sky's trying to remind us. Ethan chuckled. Remind us of what? That some things happen twice, so we don't forget the first time mattered. He looked at her, really looked. Her hair glistened under the first drops of rain. Her eyes reflected lightning and truth. He stepped closer. You've changed the way I see people, Amara. You've changed me. Her breath caught. Ethan. He stopped, searching her face. I don't expect anything. His voice cracked. I don't want this to end. Amara's heart raced. It doesn't have to. But whatever this is, it has to be real. No pity. No gratitude. Just honesty. He nodded slowly. Then, honesty it is. The rain fell harder, soaking them both. Ethan reached out, brushing a raindrop from her cheek. She didn't move away. The tension between them trembled like the thunder overhead, undeniable, powerful, but unspoken. Later, Ethan drove her home in silence. The city lights streaked past like memories. At her small apartment building, Amara turned to him. You know, you don't have to prove anything to me. He frowned. What do you mean? You don't have to pretend to be humble or kind. Just be you. Whoever that really is. He looked down, his voice low. I'm not sure I remember who that is anymore. She smiled gently. Then maybe that's what you're supposed to find. Not money. Not control. Just yourself. Ethan stared at her for a long moment, then whispered, and if I want to find that version of me, with you? Her heart skipped. She didn't answer, just smiled faintly and stepped out of the car. But as she walked up the steps, she turned back. Then start by doing something kind, without anyone watching. He watched her disappear into the rain, her words echoing in his mind. That night, for the first time in years, Ethan didn't fall asleep to spreadsheets or stocks, but to the memory of her laughter. The next morning, Ethan showed up at the elder care center again. No cameras, no driver, just him. He rolled up his sleeves and spent the day helping repair a broken wheelchair, serve meals, and read to the patients. Amara walked in mid-shift and froze. "Ethan? What are you doing here?" He looked up, smiling sheepishly, hands covered in paint. "Being kind, without anyone watching." Amara's laughter filled the hall. "You're impossible." "Maybe," he said, eyes softening. "But you make me want to be better." And for the first time, she believed him. The following week passed like sunlight through rain. Ethan visited the elder care center every day, fixing shelves, serving lunch, reading to the residents, or just sitting with Amara as the world moved quietly around them. He no longer looked like the cold executive she had first met. His smile came easier now, his laughter softer. But behind his gray eyes, there was still a shadow, something he wasn't saying. Amara noticed it every time their hands brushed, every time he started to speak and then stopped. Finally, one afternoon as they closed up the center, she asked gently, "Ethan, what are you running from?" He froze. The question landed like a stone in still water. "I'm not running," he said. She crossed her arms. "You flinch when people mention your company. You change the subject when I ask about your father. You are running from something." He looked away, jaw tight. "Some things are better left in the past." Amara shook her head softly. "Sometimes the past is exactly where healing starts." He gave a small, sad smile. "Maybe one day I'll be brave enough to believe that." 2 nights later, Amara received a call from the hospital. Margaret wanted to see her, urgently. When Amara arrived, the older woman sat upright in her bed, looking fragile but alert. Her eyes softened as Amara entered. "My dear," she began, "I need to tell you something before Ethan does, or before he doesn't." Amara frowned. "What do you mean?" Margaret reached for her hand, voice trembling. "My husband built his empire on pride. Ethan grew up watching him tear people down in the name of ambition. When Ethan was 19, they fought, over money, over morality, and his father cut him off completely." Amara's eyes widened. "He built his fortune from nothing," Margaret continued. "But the price was high. He lost himself in work, in numbers, in deals. He became the very man he swore he'd never be." Margaret sighed heavily. "And the worst part? When his father died, Ethan didn't even go to the funeral." Silence filled the room. Amara felt her chest tighten. "He never forgave him?" Margaret shook her head sadly. "He couldn't forgive himself. The night before his father passed, Ethan ignored his call. He's carried that guilt for years, hiding it behind walls made of steel and silence." Tears gathered in Amara's eyes. "That's why he avoids talking about his past." Margaret nodded. "He doesn't believe he deserves love. But you, Amara, you make him believe again. Promise me something. Anything. When he finally tells you the truth, don't walk away. Please. He's my son, but you're the reason he's smiling again." That same night, Ethan stood in his office, glass walls reflecting the glittering skyline of Atlanta. His hands rested on a photo frame, a young Ethan beside his father, both smiling, unaware of the years of silence that would follow. His phone buzzed. A message from Amara. "Your mom's okay. She told me a bit about your dad. I'm here if you ever want to talk." He stared at the message for a long time before replying. Some ghosts don't deserve words. But as he typed, his eyes burned. He wanted to tell her everything, the night he'd screamed at his father, the years he'd buried himself in power to prove he wasn't weak. Instead, he poured himself another drink and whispered to the empty room. "If she knew who I really was, she'd never look at me the same." 2 days later, Amara stopped by the Cole mansion to drop off some books Margaret had requested. As she stepped inside, she heard voices from the study, Ethan's and another man's. Curiosity pricked her ears. "You think she'll still want you when she finds out?" the man sneered. Ethan's voice was sharp. "That's none of your business, Victor." Amara peeked through the doorway. The man was tall, well-dressed, one of Ethan's business partners, she guessed. Victor smirked. You can play the good guy all you want, but I remember what happened in Chicago. The lawsuits, the buyout. You destroyed a family business just to take control. Ethan's expression hardened. They were corrupt. Victor chuckled. You didn't care about that. You cared about winning, just like your father. Amara's stomach twisted. She backed away quietly, the words echoing in her mind. Just like your father. That night, Ethan showed up at her apartment with flowers and takeout. Amara opened the door, expression guarded. Hey, he said softly. I thought maybe. Why didn't you tell me? She interrupted. He blinked. Tell you what? That you destroyed people's livelihoods for a business deal. That you became exactly what you hate. His shoulders stiffened. You were eavesdropping? I was delivering books, she shot back. And I heard enough. He set the flowers down slowly. You don't understand the full story. Then tell me, she pleaded. Stop hiding behind half-truths. His face twisted with pain. I did what I had to do. That company was laundering money through a charity fund. I exposed them, but it cost people their jobs. I hated it, but it was the only way to stop something worse. Amara swallowed hard. So you sacrificed people to save your conscience? He looked away. You think I'm proud of it? Silence filled the room. Finally, Amara whispered, you say you want to be better, Ethan. But you keep living like you're still your father's son. That hit him like a blade. He took a shaky breath, eyes glistening. I don't know how to be anyone else. Amara stepped closer, her voice trembling. Then let me show you. She touched his hand gently, not in forgiveness, but in hope. Later that night, Ethan found himself unable to sleep. He walked into his mother's room, only to find her asleep with an envelope on the bedside table, addressed to him. He picked it up and opened it carefully. My dear Ethan, I know you carry guilt heavier than gold. But guilt is a prison of your own making. Your father made mistakes, yes, but he also loved you fiercely. The night he called you, he wasn't angry, he was proud. He told me he saw himself in you, only kinder. You missed his call, but you didn't lose his love. Please, my son, let go before life passes you by like it did for him. Tears blurred Ethan's vision. He sat beside his mother's bed and whispered, I'm so sorry, Dad, and I'm sorry, Mom. The next morning, Ethan went to see Amara at the center. She was in the garden, helping an elderly woman plant marigolds. When she saw him, her eyes softened, but her posture stayed guarded. He knelt beside her, helping pat soil around the roots. I read my mother's letter last night, he said quietly. Amara looked up. And I realized I've been living in a shadow, trying to make up for one mistake by making 100 more. He took a deep breath. You told me to do something kind without anyone watching. I did, but now I want to do something kind where everyone can see. She frowned. What do you mean? I'm reopening the Chicago Foundation, he said. The one I shut down. I'm restoring every job I can, and funding a new community clinic in my father's name. Amara blinked, stunned. You'd do that? He smiled faintly. For once, I want to build instead of destroy. Her eyes filled with tears. That's the man your mother said you could be. And the one I want to be, he whispered. For you. As the morning sun broke through the clouds, Amara stood, wiping soil from her hands. You don't have to be perfect, Ethan. You just have to be real. He smiled softly. Then let me be real with you. He stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. She didn't move away this time. The garden fell silent, only the sound of birds and the wind between them. When their lips met, it wasn't fireworks or chaos. It was peace, the quiet kind that comes when two broken souls finally stop pretending they're whole. From her hospital window, Margaret watched the two of them in the garden below. A tear rolled down her cheek, but her smile was radiant. "Finally," she whispered. "He's come home." The following weeks felt like spring had come early. Amara arrived at the mansion every morning with coffee, laughter, and fresh flowers. Margaret's color had returned, and Ethan looked lighter. The lines of exhaustion around his eyes softened whenever she walked into the room. They'd share quiet breakfasts on the balcony after Margaret's therapy sessions. Sometimes they talked about everything: childhood dreams, favorite books, or why Ethan still couldn't cook without burning toast. It was simple, beautiful, human. Amara began to see the man behind the wealth, a son desperate to heal, a man terrified of losing someone again. And for the first time in years, Ethan stopped calculating what love would cost him. He just felt it. But peace rarely lasts when money and love collide. It began one morning when Ethan's assistant, Natalie, stormed into his office, holding her tablet like a weapon. "Sir, we have a problem." He looked up. "What kind of problem?" She turned the screen toward him. A gossip headline blared in red. "Billionaire Ethan Cole spotted with mystery black woman, caregiver or gold digger." Ethan's stomach dropped. The article featured grainy photos of them together at the care center, him handing her coffee, their hands brushing, a blurry frame of the garden kiss. He swore under his breath. "Who took these?" "Likely paparazzi," Natalie said. "But it's spreading fast. Investors are calling. Some are concerned." "Concerned?" he snapped. "About what?" "My humanity." "About your judgment," she replied carefully. "You've always been discreet, sir." "This is none of their damn business," he finished coldly. But he knew how fragile reputations were. In his world, empathy was weakness, and love could look like liability. Across town, Amara's phone buzzed relentlessly. Her co-workers stared as she scrolled through the article. Her photo, half smiling, half caught off guard, was everywhere. From the slums to the suite. Who is the woman behind the billionaire? Her heart pounded. She ran to the restroom, locked the door, and pressed her hands to her face. Tears welled up, half shame, half anger. By the time Ethan arrived, she was packing her bag. "Amara, wait," he said breathlessly. She turned sharply. "They're calling me a gold digger, Ethan. My boss said I might lose my job. My neighbors are whispering like I committed a crime for helping your mother." "I can fix this," he said quickly. "I'll issue a statement." "No," she interrupted. "You'll make it worse. The world already thinks I'm some charity case you're entertaining." "That's not true." "Maybe not to you," she whispered, voice breaking. "But to them, I'm not worthy of standing next to you." Ethan's voice softened. "Amara, look at me. I don't care what they think." She met his gaze, tears spilling. "But I do. Because when this ends, and it will, you'll go back to your world. And I'll still be the girl the internet humiliated." The silence that followed was deafening. He reached for her, but she stepped back. "I need space, Ethan. I need to remember who I am before I lose it trying to be someone for you." And with that, she walked away, leaving him standing in the doorway, flowers in hand, heart in pieces. That night, the media firestorm exploded. TV anchors dissected their relationship. Online trolls flooded Amara's social pages with insults. And in a televised interview, one of Ethan's board members subtly questioned his judgment and emotional stability. He watched the screen go dark, fury boiling in his chest. "You people talk about empathy like it's weakness," he muttered. "No wonder this world's starving for decency." Then he turned off his phone and drove. He didn't know where he was going until he found himself parked outside Amara's apartment. Lights off. Curtains drawn. He sat there in silence, headlights reflecting off the rain. He wanted to knock, to beg, to hold her, but he also knew she needed time. So he whispered to the night, "I'll wait for you. However long it takes." Days passed. Ethan didn't see Amara, But Margaret noticed the change instantly. "Where's that sparkle in your eyes, my boy?" she teased gently from her armchair. He smiled faintly. "It left with her." Margaret chuckled softly. "Then go get it back." He shook his head. "I can't drag her through more pain. The media's ruthless. I thought I could protect her, but I was wrong." Margaret's voice softened. "Ethan, love doesn't need protection, it needs honesty." He looked up, weary. "You built a world where people are replaceable," she continued. "But this, what you feel, it's not replaceable. Don't let fear dress itself up as nobility." Her words hit him hard. The next morning, a letter arrived for Ethan, handwritten in looping cursive. "Ethan, I need to breathe, to remember that my worth isn't measured by headlines. You showed me kindness when I was invisible. For that, I'll always be grateful. But love that makes you hide isn't love, it's survival. Maybe we both need to stop surviving and start living, even if that means apart." He closed his eyes, clutching the paper. Her words were gentle, but final. He wanted to chase her, but he knew this was her way of healing, and maybe his too. Weeks passed. The story faded from tabloids, replaced by new scandals. But Ethan couldn't go back to life before her. He sat in meetings and saw only her eyes. He signed contracts but felt nothing. Finally, he called a press conference. Reporters gathered in the marble atrium of Cole Enterprises. Cameras flashed as he approached the podium. He cleared his throat. "I have something to say, not as a CEO, but as a man." The crowd went silent. "The woman you've been writing about, Amara James, is not a gold digger. She's the reason my company now funds 5 new community programs. She saved my mother's life. And she taught me that decency shouldn't need a PR team." Murmurs rippled through the room. "If loving someone kind, strong, and brave makes me less respectable to investors, then I'll gladly resign. But I won't apologize for having a heart." The room exploded with flashes. And somewhere across the city, Amara watched the live broadcast, tears rolling down her cheeks. "You fool," she whispered, smiling through the tears. "You wonderful fool." That evening, Amara was watering her plants when she heard a knock. When she opened the door, Ethan stood there, tie loosened, rain in his hair, exhaustion in his smile. "Hey," he said softly. She folded her arms, trying not to tremble. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," he said. "But I had to tell you, your name deserves to be spoken with respect. And I'll spend as long as it takes proving that to the world." She blinked back tears. "Why would you risk everything for me?" He took a step closer. "Because everything without you feels like nothing." Her lips parted, but no words came. He hesitated, searching her face. "If you want me to walk away, say it, and I will." She shook her head slowly. "No one's ever fought for me before." "Then let me be the first," he said softly. She exhaled shakily, finally letting her guard down. "Come in before you catch pneumonia." He laughed quietly. "Only if you promise you'll still yell at me when I deserve it." She smiled. "Deal." They spent the next few weeks rebuilding, not just love, but trust. Ethan began mentoring young entrepreneurs from struggling communities. Amara returned to the care home, helping more elderly people find comfort in their last days. When they met after work, they talked less about pain and more about future, travel, laughter, maybe even family. Sometimes, the world still whispered. But now, they faced it together. Because love, when tested by the world, either breaks or becomes unbreakable. And theirs was becoming just that. If the world judged your love, your partner, your choices, would you still stand by them? Drop your answer below. Love that endures storms is the kind that changes people. The morning sun spilled through Amara's small apartment, painting the walls in soft gold. She sat at her tiny breakfast table, sipping tea, while her phone buzzed with messages, not from gossip blogs, but from strangers. "Thank you for standing tall. You're inspiring so many of us. Saw Ethan's speech. You too give me hope. For the first time in weeks, the world's noise felt kind. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. When she opened the door, Ethan stood there holding a paper bag. Peace offering, he said, lifting it. Homemade pancakes. Burnt, but heartfelt. Amara laughed, the sound lighter than she remembered. You made these. Margaret supervised. I mostly caused smoke. She smiled, stepping aside. Come in before the neighbors start another headline. He grinned. You mean, billionaire attempts breakfast, destroys kitchen? They laughed, and for a moment, the world outside ceased to exist. Ethan and Amara began spending time together quietly. No cameras, no statements, no performative gestures. They walked in the park, shared sandwiches by the lake, visited the care home together. Margaret was overjoyed to see them again. About time, she said, winking at her son. I was getting bored watching you sulk. Amara knelt beside her. You're looking strong today. Margaret smiled warmly. Because love heals faster than medicine, dear. Ethan rolled his eyes. Mom, please. Oh hush, she cut in. You're in love, Ethan. The whole house can feel it. Even the flowers in the garden bloomed again. Amara blushed, and Ethan chuckled softly. For the first time in a long while, the mansion felt like home again. That evening, as they sat on the balcony, Amara turned to him, her voice quiet. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why did you build all this? She said, gesturing at the estate, the city skyline glowing in the distance. The business, the empire. Was it all for your father's approval? He paused. Yes. And because I thought if I built enough, achieved enough, maybe I'd feel less empty. Did it work? He looked at her, then shook his head. No. The emptiness just got more expensive. She nodded slowly. I get that. I used to think if I saved enough people, maybe I'd feel like I deserved to exist. Like my life had worth. Ethan turned to her, gently taking her hand. You don't have to earn your worth, Amara. You already have it. She blinked back tears. Neither do you. And for a moment, their silence said everything their hearts couldn't. Over the next weeks, Ethan started changing how he lived. He stepped back from his company's ruthless board. Instead, he opened a foundation in his mother's name, the Margaret Grace Initiative. Amara helped him design programs for caregivers, single mothers, and young nurses. They spent hours together, drafting proposals, attending community events, and laughing through mistakes. One afternoon, while painting the foundation's new office walls, Ethan accidentally splattered blue paint on Amara's cheek. She gasped, mock-offended. You didn't. He grinned wickedly. It's an abstract statement about inner peace. Oh really? She laughed, dipping her brush and streaking paint across his white shirt. He froze dramatically. You've declared war, Miss James. She giggled, dodging his reach, and before long, they were covered in paint and laughter. Margaret peeked in from the doorway, smiling. Ah, love in color, she whispered. That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She stepped outside, finding Ethan sitting under the garden lights, staring at the stars. You're awake too? She asked softly. He nodded. Couldn't stop thinking about something. She sat beside him. What is it? He looked at her, his voice barely above a whisper. Do you ever think about what happens when this ends? When my world pulls me back and yours asks you to move on. She exhaled slowly. I used to. But not anymore. Why not? Because I stopped planning the ending, she said. Some stories are just meant to be lived, not controlled. Ethan smiled faintly. That's terrifying. She rested her head on his shoulder. That's love. And under the soft hum of the night, he whispered, You're my calm after the chaos, Amara. She smiled into his chest. And you're my reminder that even broken hearts can bloom again. A few days later, Margaret asked to speak to them both. Her voice was softer than usual, but her eyes were bright. "I've had a good life. But there's something I need to see before I go." "Don't talk like that," Ethan said, instantly tense. "Hush," she smiled gently. "All I want is to see you both happy. Together. Promise me you won't let fear write your story." Amara took her hand, tears glistening. "We promise." Margaret nodded. "Then I can rest easy knowing love didn't die in this house." Weeks later, Ethan and Amara attended a charity gala, the first time appearing publicly since the scandal. All eyes turned as they entered. Whispers buzzed across the hall. But Ethan didn't flinch. He took her hand, lifted it to his lips, and said clearly, "This is the woman who saved my mother's life and my soul. If you can't respect that, then you don't belong in my circle." The crowd fell silent. Cameras clicked. Amara's eyes filled with tears, not from embarrassment, but pride. Later that night, as they danced slowly under the chandelier, she whispered, "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," he murmured. "I'm done hiding love behind closed doors." She smiled softly. "Then dance with me until they forget the headlines." He pulled her closer. "Or until the world learns to love what it doesn't understand." Life settled into a rhythm, peaceful, genuine, and full of small joys. They spent weekends volunteering, cooking together, or watching old movies on Margaret's couch. Amara often teased, "For a billionaire, you live like a broke poet." Ethan grinned. "Rich in peace, broke in stress, I'll take that trade." Sometimes, they'd visit the lake where everything began. "Funny," Amara said one evening, leaning against him. "All this started because no one wanted to help an old lady." He chuckled softly. "And now that old lady runs our love life like a CEO." From the bench behind them, Margaret laughed. "You're damn right I do." They all burst into laughter, a sound that filled the night with warmth. As the sun set over the horizon, Ethan turned to Amara, eyes tender. "I've spent half my life chasing power," he said. "But now, all I want is peace, with you." She reached for his hand. "Then promise me one thing. Anything. When the world gets loud again, promise you won't let it make you forget this, us, right now." He smiled, squeezing her hand. "I promise." And as the wind rustled through the trees, they sat together in silence. Two souls who'd survived judgment, healed through honesty, and found something real in a world built on appearances. Have you ever loved someone who helped you heal parts of yourself you didn't know were broken? Tell us your story in the comments. Your voice might give someone else hope tonight. It was just past midnight when the phone rang. Amara stirred awake, reaching across the bed. Ethan wasn't there. The ringing continued. She fumbled for her phone and answered groggily. "Hello, Miss James," a voice said. "This is St. Helena Hospital. Mrs. Margaret has been admitted. You're listed as an emergency contact." The cup of tea on her nightstand trembled as her hand began to shake. What happened?" "A heart episode. She's stable for now, but we need family authorization." "I'll be there," Amara said, already pulling on her clothes. By the time she reached the hospital, the world outside was blurring, raindrops streaking down the windows, her breath coming fast. She spotted Ethan at the nurse's desk. His shirt was half-buttoned, his hair disheveled, his expression raw. "She collapsed," he whispered, voice breaking. "She was fine this afternoon, Amara." Laughing. "She said she wanted soup for dinner." Amara wrapped her arms around him. "She's a fighter. She'll be okay." But deep down, the way his hands trembled told her he wasn't sure anymore. The sterile white of the waiting room was unbearable. Machines beeped faintly behind the curtains. Rain lashed against the window, as if mirroring the chaos in their hearts. Ethan sat hunched over, elbows on his knees, eyes staring into nothing. Amara sat beside him quietly, her hand resting over his. "Do you want to pray?" she asked softly. He shook his head, jaw tightening. I don't believe in prayer anymore. She turned to him, eyes glistening. You did once. You believed in kindness, in love. That's prayer too. He looked at her then, eyes tired, wounded. If kindness worked, my mother wouldn't be in there. Her voice cracked. Don't say that. Don't take that from her. Or from yourself. He exhaled shakily, pressing his palms to his eyes. I can't lose her, Amara. She's the last part of me that's good. She reached for him, whispering. No. You're good too, Ethan. You just forgot. He didn't answer. But his silence was the loudest cry she'd ever heard. As hours passed, Ethan drifted between guilt and grief. Memories flooded him, of a mother who'd held his hand through every storm. He remembered her words, promise me you won't let fear write your story. And yet here he was, terrified to face the possibility of losing her. Amara watched him, heartbreaking. She knew that losing Margaret could shatter not just him, but the fragile peace they'd built together. She stepped outside for air, but the hallway was full of whispers. 2 nurses stood near the vending machine. Isn't that Ethan Caldwell's mother? Yeah, poor man. Heard the girl he's with is some charity case. Amara froze, the sting returning like old scars reopening. She turned away before they could see her tears. Hours later, Margaret was still unconscious. Ethan paced the room like a trapped animal. Finally, he turned on Amara. You should go home. You've done enough. She blinked. What? Why would I leave? He rubbed his forehead. Because I can't think straight. And every time I look at you, He stopped himself. You what? She pressed gently. I remember that this all started with you helping her. That day. And now she's. Her eyes widened. You think this is my fault? He hesitated, too long. The silence between them cut sharper than any words could. Amara's voice broke. Ethan, I have stood by you through everything. The gossip, the judgment, the pain. Don't do this. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I can't lose her. I can't lose you too. But right now, I can't breathe. Her tears fell silently. So you're pushing me away to make it easier? He looked down. Maybe. And just like that, the space between them filled with everything they didn't say. Amara turned to leave, whispering, when you're ready to remember who's been beside you all along, you'll know where to find me. The door closed softly behind her, but the echo was deafening. Hours later, Margaret's eyes fluttered open. The heart monitor beeped steadily, a fragile rhythm of life. Ethan jumped to her side, gripping her hand. Mom? Can you hear me? She smiled weakly. You look terrible. He laughed through tears. Don't scare me like that again. Where's Amara? She whispered. His throat tightened. She left. Her brows furrowed. Why? He hesitated. Because I'm a coward. Margaret's frail hand squeezed his. Then stop being one. Mom. Listen to me, she said, her voice trembling but fierce. That girl loves you, Ethan. And she's the reason I'm still here. She didn't just save my life once, she gave me something to live for. Don't lose her because you're afraid of losing me. Tears filled his eyes. What if she doesn't forgive me? Margaret smiled faintly. Then you fight for her until she does. Amara sat on a park bench hours later, staring at the same lake where she'd first met Margaret. The city lights danced on the water, mocking her reflection. She whispered to herself, I should have known fairy tales don't last. Her phone buzzed, Ethan's name flashing across the screen. She hesitated, then silenced it. A moment later, a text came through. She woke up. She's asking for you. Amara closed her eyes, tears spilling down. Her heart wanted to run to them. Her pride wanted to stay away. Have you ever walked away from someone you loved, not because you stopped caring, but because you didn't know how to stay? Share your thoughts in the comments. The next morning, Margaret's condition worsened again. The doctor explained quietly, "She's stable, but her heart is tired. It's time to prepare for all outcomes." Ethan nodded numbly. Margaret reached for his hand. "Don't let fear write your story," she whispered again. And then, her grip loosened. The monitors screamed. Nurses rushed in. Ethan's world tilted as if gravity had turned cruel. He shouted her name, begged her to stay, but her chest no longer rose. By the time the doctor stepped back and shook his head, Ethan was on his knees beside her bed, sobbing into the sheets. The world, the empire, the fortune, the pride, all turned to dust. He had nothing left but the echo of her last words. A week later, the mansion was filled with white lilies and silence. The world came to mourn, reporters, CEOs, distant relatives, but none of it mattered. Ethan stood by the casket, hollow-eyed, while Amara stood in the crowd, unseen. When it was her turn, she stepped forward quietly and placed a small lily beside Margaret's hands. "Thank you," she whispered, voice trembling, "for loving me like a daughter when no one else did." She turned to leave, but Ethan caught sight of her. Their eyes met, pain, love, regret, all swirling between them. Neither spoke. But as she walked away, he felt something inside him shatter completely. Days later, Ethan found a letter in his mother's bedside drawer, written in her delicate handwriting. "My dearest Ethan, if you're reading this, I've gone where pain no longer lives. Don't mourn me, live for me. And for that girl, the one with the brave heart. Love her, even if it scares you. Because love, my son, is the only legacy worth leaving behind. Mom." He sat there for hours, tears staining the paper, until the decision became clear. He had to find Amara. He had to make things right. 3 weeks passed after Margaret's funeral. The mansion, once alive with warmth and laughter, now echoed with silence. Ethan wandered through empty hallways, her perfume faint in the air, her laughter haunting every corner. Her chair by the fireplace remained untouched, a blanket still folded neatly on its arm. He sat there one night, letter in hand, rereading the last line over and over. "Love her, even if it scares you." His world, once built on control, now rested on the one thing he couldn't command: forgiveness. He reached for his phone 100 times, but never pressed call. Because what if she didn't want to hear his voice? What if love had moved on without him? Across the city, Amara had returned to her quiet life, or tried to. She resumed nursing at the community clinic, her heart aching whenever she passed someone elderly in a wheelchair. "Ms. James," her supervisor said one day, "you've been approved for the outreach program in Ghana. They need someone compassionate and steady. You'd leave in 2 weeks." Amara smiled faintly. "That's wonderful." But that night, sitting alone in her apartment, she whispered to the empty room, "I wish I didn't have to leave to forget." Her phone buzzed with a news alert: Ethan Caldwell announces Grace Foundation expansion in memory of his mother. She stared at the photo, him standing before the foundation logo, eyes tired but determined. He looked like a man who'd finally understood what mattered. And that realization hurt more than anger ever could. 2 nights later, Amara heard a knock at her door. When she opened it, Ethan stood there, rain-soaked, holding a small wooden box. Her breath caught. "Ethan. Please," he said quietly. "Just hear me out." She hesitated, then stepped aside. He placed the box on her table and looked around the small room. The books, the teacups, the photo of Margaret on the shelf. He swallowed hard. "I've been rehearsing this for weeks. None of it sounds right." Amara folded her arms. "Then maybe just speak your heart, not your guilt." He nodded slowly. "You're right. I was cruel. I let fear make me someone I promised I'd never be. My father. I pushed you away when all you ever did was love me and her." His voice broke. "And now she's gone. But before she died, she told me to stop letting fear write my story." He opened the box and revealed a gold locket, Margaret's. Inside was a picture of Amara and Ethan taken at the foundation launch. "She wanted you to have this," he said softly. said it belonged to the woman who brought love back into her son's life. Amara's hand trembled as she touched it. Ethan, why now? He met her eyes. Because love shouldn't come too late. For a long moment, neither spoke. Rain tapped gently against the window. Amara finally said, "Do you know what hurt the most?" He looked up. "It wasn't your words that night. It was that you didn't trust me to stay. You treated me like the world treated you, disposable." His jaw tightened, guilt visible in every breath. "You're right. I didn't know how to trust love that wasn't transactional. I thought if I pushed you first, it wouldn't hurt when you left." "And did it work?" He laughed bitterly. "No. Losing you felt like losing breath itself." Amara's eyes softened. "I never left because of wealth, Ethan. I stayed because of heart." That's what Margaret saw too. Tears blurred her vision. "But I can't go through that kind of pain again unless I know you've changed." He stepped closer. "Then let me show you." A week later, Ethan invited her to the foundation's reopening ceremony. Amara hesitated but accepted, clutching Margaret's locket like armor. The hall was simple, filled not with executives or cameras, but nurses, caregivers, and families. When Ethan took the stage, he looked directly at her. This foundation was born from kindness. From one woman's decision to stop and help a stranger when the world walked by. "I'm not here to impress investors or protect my name. I'm here to honor love, the kind that heals and humbles. Amara James, you taught me that compassion is strength, not weakness. You made my mother's final years full of joy, and you gave me a reason to become the man she always hoped I'd be." A hush fell. Cameras turned toward Amara, but this time, she didn't shrink. Ethan stepped off the stage, walked to her, and said softly, "If you'll let me, I'd like to spend the rest of my life proving that your heart changed mine." Her eyes filled with tears. "You're not making this easy, are you?" He smiled faintly. "Nothing worth keeping ever is." After the event, they walked outside together. The city buzzed, but around them, everything felt still. Ethan turned to her. "If you choose to walk away, I'll understand. But if there's even a fraction of love left between us, I'll spend every day earning it." Amara looked at him. This man once proud, now humbled, stripped of armor. She took a step closer. "Ethan, I forgave you long before you came tonight. I just needed to see you forgive yourself." He exhaled, trembling with relief. She smiled softly. Margaret was right. Love isn't about being unbroken, it's about healing together. He took her hands gently. "Then let's heal, Amara. No more fear. No more hiding." And under the city lights, they embraced, not as two people trying to fix each other, but as souls choosing to walk forward together. Later that night, they visited the lake one more time. The air was cool, the moonlight soft against the water. Ethan set down a small candle by the shore. "For Mom," he whispered. Amara placed another beside his. "For second chances." They watched the flames flicker together, reflections of everything they'd lost and everything they'd found again. "Do you ever think she's watching?" Amara asked. Ethan smiled faintly. "She's probably laughing that it took us this long to stop being idiots." They both laughed through tears, and in that laughter lived everything Margaret had ever wanted for them. Sunlight streamed through the grand glass windows of the Caldwell Foundation's new wellness center, Margaret's Haven, a sanctuary for the elderly and underprivileged. On the walls hung portraits of smiling residents, nurses, and volunteers, lives touched by compassion. Amara stood at the reception desk, now the foundation's head of community outreach. Her white blazer gleamed against her warm brown skin, her smile calm but radiant. She greeted a patient gently. "We'll take good care of you, Mrs. Thompson. You're in family now." Behind her, Ethan approached quietly, carrying a bouquet of lilies. "Still stealing hearts everywhere you go, I see." She turned, laughter lighting her face. "Just trying to keep up with you, Mr. Philanthropist." He chuckled, handing her the flowers. These are from the garden Margaret planted. They finally bloomed this week. Amara took them softly. She'd love this place. Ethan nodded, his voice tender. She would have been proud of you. Later that day, they gathered everyone in the main hall for a ceremony, the unveiling of a bronze statue. A plaque beneath it read, "In loving memory of Margaret Caldwell, the woman who reminded us that love is the greatest wealth." Ethan spoke first. "This foundation exists because one woman chose kindness when no one else did. My mother's dream was to see love break barriers, of class, color, and fear. Today, that dream is alive because of Amara James." Applause filled the room. Amara blinked back tears. "I didn't do this alone. Mrs. Caldwell showed me that every act of compassion echoes forever. We can't save the whole world, but we can save someone's world. That's enough." In the front row sat elderly residents, nurses, and even a few former investors who'd once mocked her. Now they clapped the loudest. Among them, one little girl, no older than 10, tugged Amara's sleeve after the ceremony. "My mom said you helped build this. When I grow up, I want to help people too." Amara bent to her level and smiled. "Then the world's already getting better." That evening, the foundation garden glowed under soft string lights. Ethan led Amara to the small bench beside the lake, the same lake where they'd first truly talked about their fears. He reached into his coat pocket. "You know, I used to think love was a business transaction, a contract you manage. But you taught me that love is surrender." Amara tilted her head. "Surrender isn't weakness, Ethan. It's choosing peace." He smiled. "Exactly. And I don't ever want to lose that peace again." He sank to one knee. Amara gasped softly, eyes widening. "Ethan." He held out a simple diamond ring, elegant, understated, like their love. "You once told me you wanted love that feels like home. I've spent my life building houses for the world, but you built a home inside me. Will you marry me, Amara James? Not as the woman who saved my mother's life, but as the woman who saved mine." Tears streamed down her cheeks. For a moment, all sound vanished, just wind, water, and heartbeats. She nodded, whispering through her smile, "Yes. 1,000 times yes." He stood, sliding the ring onto her finger. She kissed him, a gentle, lingering kiss that spoke of all they'd endured. Around them, the lake lights shimmered like stars bowing in approval. Later that night, Amara sat alone by the statue, tracing her fingers over Margaret's engraved name. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing in me when no one else did. For teaching your son to love again." A soft breeze rustled the flowers beside her, the lilies Ethan had brought earlier, as though Margaret herself answered, "I always knew you'd find each other." Ethan joined her quietly, wrapping his coat around her shoulders. "She'd tell us to stop crying and dance," he said with a grin. Amara laughed through her tears. "That sounds exactly like her." They swayed together beneath the moonlight, no music, just memory and gratitude. For the first time in years, Ethan felt whole. And Amara felt safe. Months later, a short clip of the foundation went viral online, titled, "From Rejection to Redemption, The Nurse Who Changed a Billionaire's Heart." The video showed Amara tending to patients, Ethan serving food in the cafeteria, and children planting flowers in Margaret's garden. It ended with Amara's voiceover. "Kindness doesn't need an audience. It just needs courage." Comments flooded in. "Cried my eyes out. Proof that love and compassion still exist." She helped an old lady, and healed an entire legacy. Their story inspired thousands to volunteer, donate, and reconnect with loved ones. But to Ethan and Amara, the greatest success wasn't fame, it was peace. On a warm spring morning, under the blooming magnolia tree in the garden, they said their vows in a small ceremony. No luxury, no media, just close friends, family, and a framed photo of Margaret smiling nearby. Amara's dress was simple ivory silk. Her curls framed her face beautifully. Ethan wore a charcoal suit, his eyes soft with emotion. Ethan, you showed me that love isn't earned by status, it's shared through grace. Amara, you taught me that forgiveness doesn't erase pain, it transforms it into strength. They sealed their vows with a kiss as petals drifted through the air like blessings. And for a fleeting, sacred second, it felt as though Margaret herself stood among them, smiling. 5 years later, Margaret's haven had expanded to 3 countries. Children and elderly alike found hope in its halls. Ethan and Amara stood on a balcony overlooking the sunrise. He wrapped an arm around her, whispering, "Can you believe how far we've come?" She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. All because one woman wasn't ignored. He kissed her forehead. And because one woman decided to care. Down below, the staff hung a banner for the day's event. World Kindness Day celebration, inspired by the love story that started it all. As laughter echoed through the courtyard, Ethan took Amara's hand. "Ready to speak to the volunteers?" She nodded, eyes shining. "Always." They walked down together, hand in hand, toward a new day, a new legacy, a love that had begun with an act of compassion and ended as a movement of hearts. Would you have stopped to help the old lady when everyone else walked away? Tell us below, because sometimes, one act of kindness can rewrite destiny.
Thank you for watching this video to the end. I am pretty sure you enjoyed it. We have a lot of other interesting and beautiful stories lined up for you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to get more amazing videos.